Good evening. Welcome to the Canadian Embassy. Bienvenue à l'ambassade du Canada. Thank you very much for joining us. My name is David Nelson. I'm the political counselor here at the embassy. And none of you can hear me. That actually might be a good thing. Some people would say. Bienvenue à l'ambassade du Canada. Thank you for joining us. And I would like, without further ado, to introduce our Deputy Head of Mission, Sara Cohen, who will make some introductory remarks. Thank you.
David, thank you so much. And thank you to all of you tonight for joining us both here in person at the Embassy of Canada to the United States of America, and those of you who've tuned in online. It's my distinct privilege to be able to welcome you to the 20th annual Seymour Martin Lipset Lecture on Democracy in the World. We are, as always, very pleased to partner with the Endowment for Democracy, and I also would really very much like to thank the hardworking embassy staff who've been able to put this event together for us tonight. This is a really fantastic annual event. The Embassy is delighted to act as host every year. The Seymour Martin Lipset Lecture on Democracy in the World was inaugurated in 2004 by the Endowment and the Monk School of Global Affairs of the University of Toronto as a forum for discourse on democracy and its progress worldwide. The lecture is named, as you all know, for one of the great democratic scholars and public intellectuals of the 20th century. Professor Lipset was also one of the most important comparative analysts of the two great democracies in North America and a strong advocate for US-Canada cooperation. We here at the Embassy certainly endorse this part of his legacy and his message to us, particularly at a time when increasingly we're reflected on the great privilege it is to work on a US-Canada relationship with neighbors who don't have to find fear in each other, but rather can work together collaboratively in a world where many, many, many countries do not have the privilege or the luxury to say these things. The Lipset Lecture has featured a number of fascinating and distinguished speakers over the last 20 years. And of course, this year is no exception. This year's lecture will be delivered by Professor Larry Diamond, Senior Fellow at the Hoover Institution, Stanford University, and founding co-editor, Journal of Democracy, on power, performance, and legitimacy, renewing global democratic momentum. I am told he will be giving us reason for optimism and perhaps some hope, which is something that I don't always get to say at events profiling foreign policy and national security. In addition to Professor Diamond, we are very pleased to host Svetlana Tsikhanouskaya, leader of Democratic Belarus. Thank you for being here. It's an honor to host you. It is an honor to host you this evening, and we are looking forward to your conversation with Professor Diamond following the lecture. Your efforts to drive a democratic transition in Belarus during and since the August 2020 sham election have been an inspiration. Canada is proud to stand in solidarity with you and your husband, who remains wrongfully imprisoned in Belarus. We're strong supporters of the democratic aspirations of the Belarusian people. The situation on the ground remains severe. Human rights violations by the regime have increased in Belarus since the 2020 election. Bogus detentions, widespread torture, and sexual and gender-based violence continue. And so this is why Canada has applied a broad and diverse set of economic and diplomatic sanctions on Belarus. We also continue to hold the regime to account for its violations through the UN system and the International Accountability Platform for Belarus. And of course, and to the point I made earlier, Canada does all of this alongside the US government. The world's leading democracies must support others struggling to maintain their systems and those people seeking to establish democratic governance for themselves. But tonight isn't only about global stocktaking. It's about recognizing each other, our friends and colleagues working hard in this space. It's also, hopefully, an opportunity for some calibrated optimism regarding the strength and resilience of democratic institutions. I give that task to Professor Diamond. To all of you, thank you again for joining us for the lecture, and for those of you here in person for the reception to follow. It's now my pleasure to hand over the podium to Damon Wilson, President and CEO of the National Endowment of Democracy. Damon, over to you.
Thank you so much, Sara, for that wonderful welcome to everyone who's here tonight. And I want to welcome everyone who's here in person, but also all of us who are online. We've been doing the Lipset lecture for 20 years, and this one created a bit of a demand. And so I do want to welcome everyone who wasn't able to join in person but is online. The Embassy of Canada has been such a wonderful partner for this lecture series from the beginning. So thanks to the team here that made this evening possible. I also want to recognize we have with us tonight some of our leadership at the endowment. Our chairman, Ken Wallach, is joining. I think we have our former chairman, Martin Frost, as well as Martin Frost, yes, our vice chair. Thank you. Our vice chair, Peter Roscom, is with us as well. Ambassador Kelly Curry, Mark Plattner, and Bill Galston. So thank you for the NED leadership for being here with us tonight. And of course, our founding president, Carl Gershman, is also with us. And the surprise arrival of a former board member I didn't know was coming, Eileen Donahoe. So we're really delighted to have you here too. I'm really pleased that we're doing tonight's lecture with so many people in this room who are at the heart of defending democracy around the world. For you, these aren't just abstract ideas, but I'm also really pleased that we're doing this in the presence of leaders on the front line of the struggle. Svetlana Tsikhanouskaya, who you heard is with us, the national leader and head of the United Transitional Cabinet of Belarus. We're also joined by President Elbek George. Mr. President, thank you, from Mongolia for being with us. Sara said, since 2004, the Endowment's International Forum for Democratic Studies, the Monk School for Global Affairs at the University of Toronto, and the Embassy of Canada have worked in partnership to organize the Seymour Martin Lipset Lecture on Democracy in the World, which has established itself as one of the most important fora for discussions on democracy. And the lecture, of course, is named for one of the great democracy scholars and public intellectuals of the 20th century, Seymour Martin Lipset. His scholarship on such themes as political parties, ideologies, voting behavior, and public opinion, this body of work constitutes one of the most prolific and widely read bodies of work on democracy ever produced by a single author. And our hosting of this series underscores the endowment's commitment to serving as a hub for democratic activity, resources, and intellectual exchange for activists, practitioners, and scholars of democracy around the world. It underscores our commitment to engaging in the battle of ideas. And I really want to thank those without whom the Lipset Lecture wouldn't be possible. Of course, the Canadian Embassy, the Johns Hopkins University Press, and the Schar School of Policy and Government at George Mason University. I also want to give a shout out to the International Forum staff, Melissa Ayton, Abigail Scala, who especially for their hard work to put this together. And this year, we are so pleased to continue the proud Lipset Lecture tradition of distinguished speakers addressing the defining issues for the condition of democracy. And on this 20th anniversary event, during the 40th anniversary of the endowment, there is no one more appropriate to deliver this lecture than Larry Diamond. Not only because Larry, like Seymour Martin Lipset, is one of the great democracy scholars and public intellectuals of the century, but also because Larry was Marty Lipset's mentee. It's personal, it's beautiful, it's about relationships. Larry will deliver the lecture that's titled Power, Performance, and Legitimacy, Renewing Global Democratic Momentum. And for us at the endowment, this is not just a lecture. We're not just here for ideas. This is about strategy. This is about our daily work. This is about the community that we have here working in common cause to try to bring the reality of democratic momentum. And at a time when democracy is under attack, we ask ourselves, how do we learn? How do we adapt? How do we innovate so that we can play our part in democratic renewal? And how do we, many of you in this room, work together towards this end? And that's the reason Larry is perfect for this lecture, because beyond his great intellectual chops, his relationship with Marty Lipset, it's that Larry understands this work, support for democracy, it's about people. It's creative, courageous, determined, principled people who are at the forefront of this struggle for freedom, democracy, and justice around the world. And like those people who, many of whom are NED partners and many of whom we have here tonight. And it's something that I've learned in my 2 years as president of the endowment, that so many of these individuals have found inspiration, guidance, and support from Larry. They have been touched by Larry. I told him yesterday that it's probably every other day I get an email from someone from around the world who refers to having been a student of Larry, having been referred by Larry, having been a Fisher Fellow colleague with Larry. And it's just remarkable the number of people that he has touched. So to connect tonight's lecture to the challenges of the real world, we are honored that following the talk, Larry will be joined by Svetlana Sikhanouskaya in a conversation moderated by Chris Walker, the Vice President for Studies and Analysis at the Endowment. Finally, I want to acknowledge Sydney Lipset, who is also with us tonight. It's really an honor to have you with us. We would not have such a wonderful achievement in this lecture series without the steadfast and remarkable support of Sydney Lipset, who is a treasured member of the NED family. She provides invaluable support to this lecture every year. She provides a moral, personal connection to it, and it's been my great honor to get to know you throughout this. So thank you. And with that, I'm going to invite Chris to give a formal introduction for Larry, and we'll get the show underway.
Larry Diamond, he's of course and we're recognizing at this prestigious in his role as make sure I have that. But Larry is much more than his scholarly. He's edited many of the were done with Mark, with whom Larry had partnership. During their time as Cohen, stunning. Carl Gershman, preternaturally to pull Larry into to make that magic pop. Larry's incredibly versatile. Done deep and extensive work on so many subjects, so many countries, including those like Burma, Taiwan, Nigeria, among many others. Larry's achievement on any single one of those would be impressive for a single scholar. He's done that and much more. Larry is much more than a scholar, as I noted. He's an extraordinary teacher and educator. Larry has leveraged his formidable scholarship to reach millions of people and students around the world. His massive online open courses have been viewed by many thousands of students far and wide. As part of his role as a public intellectual, Larry has also enriched the public discourse by authoring innumerable articles in the popular press, speaking publicly in his unique and crystal clear voice, helping vast audiences understand often deeply complex democracy-related issues. Larry has a superb organizational sense. Apart from the multitude of hats he's worn at Stanford University, Larry's been deeply engaged organizationally, both informally and formally, with countless democracy organizations, including, of course, NED, all of which benefit from his wisdom, integrity, and energy. Larry's shrewd analytical talents have infused a multitude of organizations and important initiatives.
For instance, Larry has been pivotal to the work of the Afrobarometer and the Asian Barometer, which have been so important over time, understanding democracy evolutions in these regions at a strategic level. Larry tackles the big issues. These have included those as diverse as emerging technologies, impact on political life, democracy in Africa, democracy in Asia, and China's global challenge to democracy, and many, many more. One important such example of his leadership as a catalyst and driver of change on an emerging big issue was the initiative undertaken by the Hoover Institution and the Asia Society that culminated in the 2018 report, China's Influence in American Interest. This effort, which pulled together an incredibly diverse range of China scholars from just about every conceivable corner of the political spectrum, was truly critical for changing the public understanding and driving change on this issue. Larry's role in this was pivotal. I've only scratched the surface of Larry's enormous contributions, and as you can tell, Larry stays pretty active. And I'd like to conclude by mentioning something especially important in the role that Larry plays in our community. Larry possesses an exceptional nose for talent. Like a Major League Baseball scout who travels from diamond to diamond looking for talent, Larry has a nose for looking for the best possible talent out there. In this case, it's not for a shortstop with a strong throwing arm, but it's for democracy talent who can help strengthen our community. On this, Larry will often say something along the lines of, hey, have you ever heard of this person who's doing incredible work on emerging tech issues or on democratic resilience? And invariably, his suggestions and recommendations are impeccable with his recommendations. And so over the years, Larry's identified, encouraged, and helped quite literally hundreds and hundreds of people who have in turn been enlisted to take on fellowships, write for the Journal of Democracy or other prestigious publications, or otherwise make their way into the democracy field. I've seen Larry doing this myself, do this on so many occasions, and I know that I've only seen a small number of his engagement on this front. He's helped literally thousands of people on this, on their journey for engagement in the democracy sphere. And it speaks to Larry's commitment and generosity. Larry is generous with his time and ideas and support. This is perhaps most impressive in his interactions with younger people who are early in their career, activists and colleagues who are still making their way up. Larry is a mentor extraordinaire. He makes a special point of helping those who are still making their way up the career ladder, and he does this often quietly, and it's possible to take these sorts of things for granted. Everyone here who knows Larry knows just how true this is. And so I think you understand Larry is a very special person. He's a force of nature and a good and generous person in the truest sense of these words. His contributions to the cause have been and continue to be exceptional. And so I feel so privileged, especially in such challenging times for democracy, to welcome Larry Diamond, a lion of the field, a mentor and friend to so many, to deliver the 2023 Lipset Lecture on Democracy in the World. Larry.